Dear students, let us start the discussion on today's newspaper, that is 31st May 2016. The first article is related to right to intervene. Now, let me give you a scenario to explain this. There was Cyclone Nargis, and Myanmar, the military chief, he does not want to allow any of the outsider to supply the humanitarian aid. And the thousands of people are dying, but because of the ruler, no humanitarian aid has reached the people. So in this context, do we need to leave the people to their fate, or international community has any responsibility to protect the citizens? This has led to a condition called the R2P, that is called responsibility to protect. Now in this context, the sovereignty and responsibility to protect, these are in conflict with each other. Or else I can say it this way, the R2P has come up from humanitarian intervention, idea of humanitarian intervention. So in this case, what it tries to say is, a country's sovereignty will be upheld to the extent it takes care of its people. And if the state itself turned against its own people, the international community has a responsibility to intervene in that particular nation to bring in or to protect the citizens. Now the second thing is, if it is the case, there has to be a uniform condition for intervention for everyone. It shall not be a differential treatment for different countries. And the second thing is, the cost of humanitarian intervention in the form of human life must not be more than what is happening now. So if you take these two criteria into condition, the United States, so it has, Canada has mooted this idea, and United States and everyone has supported them. As for the responsibility to protect, it is the UN Security Council which has to agree to it. Now, many times even UN Security Council did not agree. The US went ahead, the NATO went ahead, with little regard to the UN Security Council resolution. And it is differentially applied. For example, Operation Cast Lead, which has led to the huge bombing of the Palestinian areas by Israel, was totally ignored even after United Nations report saying that there are war crimes involved in it. But in the case of other countries, if you talk about Libya, if you talk about Iraq, there is an immediate intervention by the United States. It means that the humanitarian intervention has become a tool to interfere with the sovereignty of the countries to promote the interests of the United States. So that's why it is rightly be called as right to intervene rather than right to protect, or responsibility to protect. And second thing is, if you see Miss Albright, the UN ambassador to, or US ambassador to United Nations, she herself agreed 500,000 children are killed due to economic sanctions on the Iraq. So it means that the cost of intervention in the human life, calculated by human life, is much higher than other means. So in this case, yes, you cannot leave the life of the people to the will of a dictator. But at the same time, it shall not be discretionary for another country to intervene into the affairs of the sovereign nation. So it is a legitimate body which has to take the action. It shall not be an American hegemony over the world which has to take this condition into hands. Coming to no country for old people. Now, if you see recently Gandhi's grandson pitiable situation that has led to this article. Now, in India, there are few protections which are given to the old people. An integrated program of old persons, and there is also a law for children to maintain their parents. The Maintenance of Elderly Citizens and Parents Act, that is also exists. But who will keep a case against their own children? That's what is the logical question here. So in this case, by 2050, our geriatric population is going to reach at least 18% of the population. That is going to be too big. So from now onwards, if we don't wake up to this call, then the right to live and right to live with dignity will be compromised for the world people. So the three major areas of focus will be health, and the next is housing. The third one is related to dignity of life. Now health. You know that the geriatric people, old people, they face with different health conditions. So the geriatric medicine in India did not develop fully. Our attention is to develop this geriatric medicine. And housing, government has to make because the nuclear families are breaking down. So we need to provide an alternative living or home caregivers, etc. to the world people. So in this context, old age homes which are being built by the government under integrated program for old persons are very minimal. So in the private and public sector, community living for the old people, old age homes, etc. shall be encouraged for. And the next is dignity. Now, old people need dignity. So they need a respect for their self. So in this context, if they feel they want to work, they have self-worth. So opportunities of employment have to be created, and their wisdom can be used to guide the younger generations. And the second thing is dementia and many other illnesses come along with old age, some psychiatric hallucinations, etc. So the generations have to be sensitized about these diseases of the old people so that they deal with them carefully. Do you know who abuse the old people the most? The people who are close to them. So the dignity treatment need a sensitization. Now, the prejudices against the African people. If you carefully observe this, there are recent racial attacks against the African citizens. Though Indian government later dismissed them as trivial issues not biased on race, but however the damage was done. Yeah, the African envoys not attending the Africa Day celebrations has made the government to take the look or effective look into the matter. And what the External Affairs Minister Sushma Swaraj has said is the sensitization of the communities is very much necessary. But above all, first the government has to accept the problem, and then interaction of the communities have to be increased. And it is more important now because the South-South Cooperation, that is Asia-Africa trade, is increasing manifold, and India is becoming a destination for education and health for the African citizens. If you take within last 2 decades itself, it has increased from 4 billion or 4 to 6 billion to almost 64 billion now. So that is what is the potential being created. So, and the second thing is, India will be projected in a very bad light among the International Committee of the Nations. So that's why the protective measures for expats are also any person coming from another country and providing for a proper guidelines how they have to approach the local establishment in case of a challenge. All these are very necessary. Now coming to MG Narega Index, it's a case study. So who did this case study? Vision India Foundation. What are the outcomes of this case study? So it took 3 characteristics to study the MG Narega implementation. You know that under MG Narega, 100 days of non-skilled manual labor have to be provided to an applicant. So in this case, they took 3 criteria. Average days of work created for the household, and percentage of the wages paid in the stipulated 15 days time, and work completion rate. So when they observed on these 3 criteria, so states were placed at different ranks. So even the neighboring states, they are not performing alike. So it's majorly the governance weakness that is exposed through this study. So in this context, in the northeast, if we observe, Tripura, Mizoram, they are high on the list. But if you see the Arunachal Pradesh, it is low on the list. It means that there are many local conditions that are influencing its implementation, or the governance need to be geared for the better implementation. So interstate learning and also giving priority to the local challenges can make the program better. Now coming to India-Pakistan relations. So first one is Pakistan, it talks about full scope nuclear deterrence, where it will include strategic nuclear weapons and tactical nuclear weapons. So it says it is against India's cold start doctrine. What is meant by a cold start doctrine? It's India's blitzkrieg. It means if a war starts within hours, India wants to occupy the important cities of Pakistan. That's what the cold start doctrine which has been envisioned. So the second thing is counter to this. Pakistan wants to develop the tactical nuclear weapons which can be used in war field. So in this case, these tactical nuclear weapons are prone for more theft. and also misuse. So everyone are feared for this plutonium-based tactical nuclear weapons. And as of now, with the nuclear fuel reserves, Pakistan is the fifth largest weapon possessing nation. So, in this case, A.Q. Khan, the nuclear father of Pakistan, who is associated with the clandestine supply of nuclear technology to Iran and Libya, has made a comment that India will be attacked within just 5 minutes with nuclear weapons. But, so though the comment is unwarranted, but if you carefully observe that, the tactical nuclear weapons poses the danger to India. And the second thing is, Pakistan is also developing new missiles, especially Nasser, with a view of delivering the tactical nuclear weapons. And the second thing over here is, India has stuck to its nuclear doctrine, that is no first strike policy. So only when a nuclear weapon strikes India, India is going to go for a second nuclear strike. So in this case, the second strike which India is going to make is going to be decisive. So India stuck to its guns, but however, there is no chance of India-Pakistan involving in war at this moment. But however, these comments are unwarranted. Now, HIV. Now, almost 2,234 cases, they got transmitted through blood transfusions. So every blood transfusion has to be screened for HIV and also other infections such as hepatitis B, hepatitis C, malaria, syphilis, etc. But in spite of this, these many blood transfusions or this much of disease incidence is responsible for blood transfusions. What might be the reason? One is most of the blood transfusions in India are voluntary. So in this voluntary blood transfusions, the screening might be overlooked. The second thing is, there is something called window period. So let's take ELISA test is done on HIV detection. So this antigen may not be visible if sufficient viral load is absent. So before it is detected by a test, we can say that the patient is in window period, the person is in window period. Then comes the lab detection phase. So in this case, the window period per people, they are not screened by the drug, they are not screened, can't be screened by the laboratory, and they can become the potential transmitters of the disease. That is one danger. However, in the last 2 decades, if we compare, the total incidence of the disease through transfusions has come down from 10% to 1%. But our target is not this, it is to achieve zero transmission rates. Now coming to the hacking. So the smartphones are the new tools, they are the targets for the Pakistan and Chinese military to get the sensitive information from India. So in this case, connecting to the establishment networks in north and south blocks, and also charging the phones connecting to the computers, data transmission, or connecting to any computer on the network, nothing is allowed as per the new guidelines provided by the government in this issue. Now coming to global competitiveness, this report is given by a Switzerland-based IMD Global Competitiveness Center. According to this, India is placed in the 41st rank. So the major reasons for this are increasing ease of doing business, exchange rate stability, so twin deficits are in the manageable level, and tax evasion are also the steps taken towards reduction in tax evasion. So these are the few things which have led improvements in India. On the other hand, India's low expenditure on education, which creates the human capital at a later date, made the India to come down. And added to that, the total tax revenues collected in India, they are very lowest. So less than 2% of the people pay the taxes in this country, direct taxes. So all this made the India a drag on global competitiveness index. And coming to e-waste, now you know that e-waste is going to be a new danger to the world. So in this context, e-waste management rules are being given by the government. According to that, the role of the state governments has been clearly spelt. And second thing is, the producer himself is responsible for collection of the e-waste and then recycling of the e-waste and disposal of the e-waste. So in this case, if you see the intensity of the problem, in India only 30% of the e-waste is getting recycled and more than 1.7 million kgs of e-waste is being produced. So in this context, it is the time India has to wake up the challenges of the e-waste. Now previously, in your prelims question, what are the components of the e-waste was asked. Always, any e-waste, what are the components? Answer is all the above. So these are the articles for today. So today I was unable to download this Indian Express newspaper. So there is some problem with the website, so I'm not doing that. And thank you very much. And I got the control over the CivilsPrep website today. I also learned how to post onto it so that the problems, I think, can be reduced. So thank you very much. All the best.